Hello everybody, and welcome to this video in which I start to talk about Nioh 2. Now when I say I start to talk about the game, it is a game that I think I'm going to be talking about quite a bit into the future. I was a big fan of Nioh. I was a little bit unsure about whether I'd get along with Nioh 2, to be honest, going into it. I'll talk about why in a moment, but based on this demo I'm actually completely turned around. I think this is going to be a game I love and want to talk about a great deal into the future. Now, there's been a demo that's been available on the PlayStation Network. I think it was released on November 1. I think it's only available until November 10. So you've still got a little bit of time to play it if you're keen to check it out. I only played it for about 2 hours. I'm not a big fan of playing demos as a rule. I prefer to go into the whole experience fresh when I have a chance to review it. And that's what I want to do with Nioh 2 as well. But I couldn't resist just checking it out just to see how it looks and how the initial impressions kind of come across to me. And that's what this video is about. So this is really my very first initial impressions as I played through just the first couple of hours. I think it was about 2 hours. And yeah, I'm a big fan of this. I think it's going to be a great game. So just in terms of why I was a little bit concerned about Nioh 2 going into it, the thing about Nioh that I loved was the historical context of it and the fact that it introduced me to William Adams, the White Samurai, the first and I believe only samurai that's from Europe that ended up with that distinction, which is, if you're not too familiar with Japanese feudal history, a samurai is basically the equivalent of a knight in Japan, and it was very rarely conveyed to anybody from outside of the country. William Adams managed to achieve it, and that makes him I guess a person of historical note. And he is a fascinating character. He has a fascinating story, and because of Nioh, I discovered it. After playing the game, I was really inspired to learn more about the character or the person, so I started to read books about him. I actually visited his gravesite in Tokyo, and found that experience to be fascinating as well. He's an interesting character, let's put it that way. So when they announced that Nioh 2 would have a created character, and you'd be able to name them and, you know, give them whatever design you liked, I was a little bit unsure about that, to be honest. I was hoping that with Nioh 2 you'd get a chance to learn about another period of Japanese history, or another persona at least, and that obviously wasn't going to be the case, at least as far as the main character is concerned. The actual period of history that this game takes place in is also Sengoku period, which is basically the same period that William Adams was active in Japan as well. So I felt like there was going to be a bit of a missed opportunity there to address one of the many other times of conflict and warfare that Japan has had over the years, and teach people, I guess, a little bit about a different period of history, or at least inspire them to go out and learn about it. So I was a little bit concerned about all of that going into Nioh 2. I thought that it was perhaps, for want of a better term, perhaps a little bit lazy on Koei's part to go back to something that's so tried and true for the company. Obviously the Samurai Warriors series is based on Sengoku history as well. It seems to be something that the company is very familiar with. So rather than challenge themselves with a period that's a little bit out of that, they seem to have gone back to the same kind of era. So again, I was a little bit concerned going in. But then there was the introductory cutscene, and that turned me around completely. That introductory cutscene seems to be taken, if not word for word, then very closely from scenes from Eiji Yoshikawa's classic historical novel Taiko. And Taiko is one of the first books that I read when I was starting to learn about Japanese history, and I found it to be an absolutely amazing book. It's actually one that I've read a couple of times now. I think it's right up there with my favourite books of all time. And for a game to actually be at least clearly inspired by it, if not using it wholesale, is certainly something that has my attention. So while I only got to see one cutscene from my time with this demo, all of my concerns are immediately put to rest, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing how the rest of the game's plot kind of plays out from here. The other thing I really loved about this game was how it seems to have turned up everything that I loved about the original Nioh to 11, and that's immediately from the opening section of the game. So one of the things I loved about Nioh so much was just how Japanese it all was, and how it indulged the Japanese storytelling traditions, especially around yokai and mythology and all that kind of stuff. And that was something that actually disappointed me a little bit about Sekiro. So just to talk about Sekiro briefly, I thought it was an amazing game, but it was a game by a Japanese developer about a Japanese setting, and yet it still felt like the team was a little bit hesitant to really go all in with that because they wanted to sell to a global audience. Nioh doesn't have those qualms. It very much is willing to go all in with the Japaneseness of it and use yokai monsters which look like they're pulled straight from Japanese paintings and stories. And here's one you can see right here in front of you on the screen right now. These things come quite quickly in Nioh 2, so within the first couple of hours I had the opportunity to fight two of them, and that's an above and beyond the Oni and the regular kind of human enemies as well. These kind of mid-level bosses, not really bosses, but they're mid-tier kind of mid-level tough enemies that are optional to fight, but you get good rewards for doing so. They come on really thick and very fast, and part of the reason that the developers can do that is because everything kind of happens more quickly in Nioh 2. So where in Nioh 1 I felt like the distances between the safe spots were a little bit extended, and I also felt that, you know how with a Souls game, if you've played many of them, you always have opportunities to create shortcuts back to areas that you've previously visited. So you'll explore for a certain period of time, and then you'll have an opportunity to drop a ladder or close a drawbridge or do something which will allow you to get back to the previous save spots and so on. That stuff happens fairly quickly in Nioh 2, or at least in the bit that I've played so far. So because of that, the developers have thrown difficult enemies and challenges at you quite quickly, knowing that you're not going to lose too much progress and get too frustrated if you find one particular enemy is really annoying and difficult. I've got to say, if you can't already tell from the footage, I am very rusty with my Souls-likes. The last one I played was Sekiro, and it had a very different kind of rhythm to it than the Souls games do, and certainly Nioh. So I had to use the ability to summon other players into my game to help me out. I usually get through these games through, stubborn commitment to actually keep playing it until I do. I'm not great at this kind of game, I've got to say, but as long as I enjoy the process, then I kind of stick through it. And again, I feel like this game is kind of tailored to somebody who, like me, who is not potentially great at these games, but will find the short distance between save spots and the opportunity to recover to be something of a boon, while the game doesn't have the difficulty options, which I know some people will probably want. I feel like it's more accessible than the original Nioh because of that. I'm just hoping, of course, that the rest of the game kind of continues to play like that, because I did feel like if Nioh had a weakness, it was that it did feel like you could get quite stuck at times, and I didn't feel like that from this so far, even though I kept losing to those Oni things, to the yokai monsters. I never felt like I was trapped in this game. Now, earlier in the video I mentioned that I did really appreciate the ability to play as a named character in Nioh, and I appreciated the ability to learn about William Adams through playing the game. In saying that, I'm a big fan of Koei's character creators generally, because they are complex and they do allow you to really take ownership of your character. And Nioh 2 is certainly in that mold. There's a very complex character creator in here. I obviously chose to make a Hatsune Miku, like as I always do when I have a character creator. And on top of that, you've got plenty of weapons options. So just like the original Nioh, there's dozens of different weapons types that you can choose between. And I've gone with the dual sword type because that's basically what I always play when I have these kinds of games. You can also make your character specialize in kind of high, medium and low attack stances, and there's this really complex leveling up system that you can really get involved with, and there's a lot of customization in here, and there's a lot of loot as well, you may have seen from the video footage, enemies drop stuff constantly, which is, it's not quite Diablo-like, but it's kind of getting there. It's certainly more than, I get the sense that Dark Souls and whatever is kind of reliant on loot for keeping people into the gameplay loops. This one has a good sense of reward as you're playing. Even if you only play for a short period of time, you feel like you're making some kind of progress, even if you end up dying and losing all your experience points like you can, because it is a Souls-like, you still feel like you're making progress. And right from the start, you can summon characters into your game, real life players, I mean, very easily, and they can help you out. So again, this game does feel like it's more accessible than a lot of other Souls-likes, even though that difficulty option is not there and you are set to a specific difficulty from the outset. Aesthetically as well, this game is gorgeous right from the outset. The variety is really strong, and again, I haven't played too far in, so I don't know if the game continues that throughout its runtime, but I certainly hope it does, because it doesn't matter what section of the game you're playing, you'll move between indoor and outdoor areas. You'll have a lot of verticality where you can move up and down spaces. There's opportunities to find shortcuts and treasure and kind of secret areas and run into traps, and all of that stuff kind of comes frequently. And I think that that's important for the Souls-like, and it's something that lesser developers with Souls-likes often get wrong, because they ask you to replay sections over and over and over again, especially areas leading up to boss battles, because they're difficult by design. If at any point it feels like the environments get repetitive, even within each small section of the game, there's every chance that you'll start to feel like you're bogged down and you'll want to give up on the game. And I think, you know, Dark Souls was really good at that even when you were playing for just half an hour, even if you had to replay the same section 2 or 3 times in that space of time, you would still feel like you're moving through different areas, and it always felt like there was some kind of progress being made, even when you weren't really moving anywhere. Even the progress through the individual environments was quite good. This game has that. And I feel like, again, the original Nioh was slightly less refined in that area, where I did feel like there were times where I was kind of stuck in the one space. I mean, Nioh asked you to actually replay environments a fair few times as well. And that meant that it could be quite a while before you got to really see something new. With this one, I always felt like I was making progress quite quickly, and even if I was running into the same enemies, I at least felt like my journey to those enemies was varied and interesting. That's basically it for these first impressions of Nioh 2. I really am looking forward to playing the full game. I probably won't do another video until I get a chance to play that full game, because I want to sit down with the full thing before I make any further progress through it. But yes, I'm very excited for this now. I think it's going to be an amazing thing when it releases, and definitely a worthy follow-up to a very, very good game in its own right. So thank you for watching. Please back me on Patreon if you enjoy my videos. Please subscribe, of course, it really does help me, and we will see you at the next video.